Meet 33-year-old rapper Nissim Black. Born and raised in Seattle, he moved to Israel in 2016 after converting to Orthodox Judaism a few years prior. His unique spiritual journey is the focus of his music, though it didn't start out that way.
Tell me about your early days in Seattle.
Both my mother and my father were part of the first hip-hop group in Seattle. I came out of the womb recording and rapping and dancing, so music was just really in my blood. I recorded actually my first record when I was 13 years old, and I think from then on it was like, this is what I want to do with my whole entire life.
Nissim says exposure to crime during his youth influenced his lyrics back then.
Even though you guys had this passion for music, I know drugs was a part of the picture and caused some challenges.
So I was exposed to drugs very early on. I would witness, people coming in, trafficking throughout my house. I started smoking weed when I was 9. By the time I was 12, I was already selling. I think the next year, I was expelled from the school district for bringing a gun to school. So I had very early on seen a crazy life.
However, faith also lingered somewhere in his DNA, leading Nissim to reinvent himself more than once.
My first introduction to religion was Islam. My grandfather was a Sunni Muslim. By the time I was 13 years old, I ended up going to a camp with the missionary group that introduced Christianity to me.
Still, he struggled. He says that a violent altercation with another artist in 2008 was a turning point. He prayed to do better, eventually becoming a husband and father, then finding spiritual refuge through a local synagogue.
I got a Quran, I got a Christian Bible, I have the Jewish text, the ones that were translated into English. And I was spending like 8 hours a day going through these different texts. And eventually, after a lot of prayer and growth, the Judaism was a thing that shined forth through me. This was a relationship that I wanted to be a part of.
Though briefly stepping away from music to focus on the Torah and observing the Sabbath, he figured out how to bring both sides of his identity together.
It was one of those things where I sort of feel like, I want to be really connected to my culture, and I need to bring in all of me inside of the studio. Just because I'm living this type of lifestyle doesn't mean that I can't go and grab all the most important and precious things of where I came from. I feel like that was going to be the best me that I could present to anybody musically.
Today, his song Motherland Bounce has over 4 million YouTube views. His new single, Win, already racking up over 1.5 million. But for Nissim, finding himself in faith has been what's most important.
It's an important investment for me to be a positive influence, because what are my kids going to look up to?
Yo, 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 yo.
When people get to hear your music, what do you want them to feel?
I want people to feel progression and growth. I want them to feel, uplifted. I've always said that if I have 2 to 3 minutes of somebody's attention, I want to put the most amount of light inside of their ear at that time that I possibly can.